What if I told you there's a kind of cow that can make a tiger back off? This isn't your usual bull inside a fence. This is a wild animal that's almost as heavy as a small car and packed with strength that no bodybuilder could ever match. We grew up with the wrong idea about cows, and today we're going to set that straight. When people hear cow, most think of a slow, gentle animal chewing grass and just waiting to be milked. They look defenseless, like animals that could be pushed around by a small child. But in the real wilderness, far from fields and farms, the ancestors and close relatives of domesticated cows live, and some of them are like walking tanks, giant animals that can turn the tables even on the fiercest predators. There are only 13 recognized species of wild cattle in the world. They can be found in Asia, Africa, Europe, and North America. Sadly, some of them have already disappeared completely. The ones that remain continue to fight for survival, and some of them are capable of taking down a person without even slowing down. So I gathered all 13 species and ranked them from the most powerful to the most gentle, along with an explanation of why they ended up in each position. Stay until the end because the one at number 1 is an animal that even tigers choose to respect rather than try to challenge. But before we start, if you're new to our channel, make sure to subscribe so you'll always be updated with videos like this. Number 1, the Gaur. In the first spot and recognized as the most powerful among all 13 types of wild cattle is the Gaur. And honestly, it has almost no equal. This is the largest wild cattle species in the world. A large male Gaur can weigh up to 1,500 kilos. That's even heavier than a small car. A gigantic animal that stands on 4 legs and is almost all muscle. It reaches 7.2 feet, or 2.2 meters tall at the shoulders, so its back is higher than most people. It has a thick ridge of muscle along its back, giving it the appearance of someone lifting heavy weights. Its broad and tough forehead serves as a natural battering ram. In India, it is also called the Indian bison, but that's not the correct name because it isn't actually a true bison. What's even more impressive is that the Gaur lives in the forests of South and Southeast Asia, sharing its habitat with the tiger, the largest type of cat in the world. But even the tiger, known as the king of the jungle, usually avoids it. A healthy adult Gaur is so big, so strong, and ready to fight when necessary. If a tiger does try to attack, it usually chooses young Gaurs, the elderly or the sick. And even then, it still needs to be careful. A healthy adult Gaur is one of the few animals in the world that a tiger would rather avoid than risk a fight with. Strong, calm, and steady like a wall, there's no doubt why it's at the top of the list of the most powerful wild cattle. Number 2, wild water buffalo. In second place is the wild water buffalo or wild buffalo. If the Gaur is like a bodybuilder, the wild water buffalo can be compared to a warrior with massive weapons. A large male can weigh around 1,200 kilos, making it one of the heaviest wild cattle in the world. But it's not its weight that's the most terrifying, it's those massive horns. The wild water buffalo has the longest horns of all wild cattle. These are large, curved, and can reach over 6.6 feet or 2 meters from end to end. It's like looking at a very wide steering wheel that's even bigger than a door. The only difference is these horns are made of solid bone, have sharp tips, and are attached to an animal that's heavier than a grand piano and known for its quick temper. Wild water buffalo live in the swamps and grasslands of India and some parts of Southeast Asia. They are also the ancestors of the domesticated buffalo used for plowing rice fields. But while the domesticated buffalo is known for being gentle and patient, its wild relative remains one of the strongest and heaviest. It is also a member of the wild cattle family, but the wild buffalo is the opposite of the gentle domesticated buffalo. It is always alert, quick to anger, and will not hesitate to charge at any animal or person it perceives as a threat. It shares the same environment with tigers and crocodiles, and although a young buffalo may be an easy target, but it is a different story when facing a fully grown adult wild water buffalo. When it lowers its massive horns, it becomes a very difficult opponent, even for the fiercest predators. Number 3, the Aurochs. In third place is the Aurochs. an animal that we will never see alive again. This is the only animal on this list that is completely extinct because the last recorded aurochs died in 1627 in a forest in Poland. But it cannot be removed from the list of the strongest wild cattle because this is the original wild bull, the ancestor of all domesticated cattle in the world today. In other words, every cow, every piece of meat, and every glass of milk that we have today all came from this mighty animal. In comparison, modern cows are just smaller and tamer versions of their ancient ancestor. A male aurochs stands about 5.9 feet or 1.38 meters tall at the shoulder and weighs around a ton. It also has long horns that curve forward and can reach up to 80 centimeters in length. In ancient times, aurochs were widespread in Europe, Asia, and North Africa. Even ancient people truly feared this animal. The Romans wrote about it, and hunters back then took pride in it. Killing an aurochs was something to be proud of, just like how some people today take pride in climbing high mountains. Even Julius Caesar wrote about the wild bulls in Europe and described them as being almost as large as elephants. Although it's clear that he exaggerated the description. This just shows how much fear the aurochs caused people back then. They moved quickly, they fought fiercely, and they were armed with massive horns. They weren't the kind of cattle you'd see grazing in the fields. As time went by, people continued to hunt them and took away their habitat until they completely disappeared from the world. That's why they remain in third place. As a reminder that the domesticated cattle we have today came from one of the most terrifying animals that once roamed Europe. Number 4. Wild yak. In fourth place is the wild yak, a gigantic animal that seems to have chosen to live in the highest places in the world. The large males can weigh over 1,000 kilos and they carry that massive weight while living on the Tibetan Plateau, one of the highest regions on the planet. There, the air is very thin. That's why most animals, even people, have a hard time breathing. They live in places above 16,400 feet, or 5,000 meters, the altitude where temperatures can drop to negative 40 degrees Celsius. But for the wild yak, it seems unfazed by the extreme cold and thin air. Its entire body is covered with very thick and long fur that almost touches the ground. It's as if it's always wearing a thick blanket against the freezing climate. Beneath that thick fur is its powerful body with large muscles, long curved horns, and a low head designed to push and ram anything that blocks its path. There is a famous account from an explorer in 1898 saying that there were so many wild yaks on one side of the Himalayas that it seemed there were more yaks than hills themselves. But the situation is very different now. Their population has dropped significantly, and currently the wild yak is at risk of extinction. Wild yaks are bigger and darker than the domesticated yaks used by people for milk and wool. But don't underestimate them. An adult male wild yak in its frozen home is truly a giant creature. There are only a few predators that can survive in such high places, much less bring down a fully grown wild yak. Strong, stubborn, and able to survive in conditions that would kill almost every other animal on this list. Number 5. The American bison. In fifth place is the American bison, the most famous symbol of the vast plains of North America. You may have seen it on coins, flags, or old Western movies, but behind its thick fur is an animal with extraordinary strength and speed. A large male bison can weigh up to 1,000 kilos. Its large hump above the shoulders is also very noticeable. And did you know that hump is not fat? It's actually a massive cluster of muscle that supports its heavy head. Because of this, it can swing its head like a giant sledgehammer and dig through thick snow to reach the grass buried underneath. Here's the surprising part. This animal can run up to 40 miles per hour or about 65 kilometers per hour. That's even faster than the fastest person alive. Not only that, it can also jump almost 2 meters high. Imagine an animal that's almost as big as a pickup truck running like a racehorse and jumping like a deer. This isn't the kind of animal you'd want to be surprised by up close. Every year, there are tourists who get too close just to take a picture, and many of them get hurt because they underestimate the speed and strength of the bison. In the past, the American bison roamed North America in herds of up to 10 million. There were so many of them that they changed the very shape of the plains. But because of intense hunting, they were almost completely wiped out. By the year 1900, it was estimated that fewer than 2,000 remained. Fortunately, they slowly increased in number again. Now, the American bison serves as living proof that size, speed, and extraordinary strength can all be found in a single animal. Number 6. The African buffalo. In 6th place is the African buffalo, also known as the Cape buffalo. Many might think it deserves a higher rank on this list, but if we're only talking about size and weight, it can't match the giants that came before it. A large male African buffalo typically weighs between 1,500 and 2,000 pounds, or roughly 700 to 900 kilos. This is lighter compared to the Gaur, wild yak, and American bison. But don't be fooled by its weight. When it comes to courage and being dangerous, it is still one of the animals that predators least want to encounter in the forests of Africa. So why is it only in 6th place? Because if we base it on strength compared to body size, it might be the best in terms of strength among all on the list in all of Africa. The Cape buffalo is known as the widowmaker, or the one who leaves widows behind. And it didn't get that reputation for no reason. It's estimated to be responsible for around 200 human deaths every year. That's even more than what lions cause. On top of its head, there's a thick part of bone called the boss, a tough shield that serves like a built-in helmet. From here, its heavy and strong horns protrude. But the most dangerous thing is, the weapon of this animal is its temperament. The African buffalo is known for being vengeful. There are times when an injured buffalo comes back to ambush the hunters that harmed it. When lions attack their herd, they don't just run away on their own. Instead, they fight together. They often kill lions by goring them with their horns or trampling them. And when their calves are in danger, they give everything to protect them. So yes, it may not be the biggest on the list, but if the measure of strength is the ability and courage to turn a predator's life into a nightmare, there's no doubt the African buffalo deserves the 6th spot. Number 7. The European bison, Wisent. In 7th place is the European bison, also known as the Wisent. This is the heaviest wild animal in all of Europe. A large male European bison can weigh around 2,000 pounds or 900 kilos. It's a bit taller than the American bison, but has a slimmer build. Like its American relative, it also has a large muscle hump on its shoulders and thick fur on the front part of its body. This animal almost disappeared completely. By the early 1900s, all wild European bison were wiped out due to excessive hunting. Fortunately, about 50 individuals remained in zoos and private parks. They became the last hope for the entire species. All the European bison roaming the forest today came from that small group. It's one of the most remarkable stories of an animal's comeback from the brink of extinction. Today, they can be found in ancient forests like the Białowieża forest on the border of Poland and Belarus, where they quietly roam among the trees like creatures from a legend. They are usually calmer than the African buffalo and not as aggressive as the American bison. But don't be fooled by their calmness. A full-grown European bison is still a powerful giant of the forest that can defend itself when needed. A European bison can toss a grown man with almost no effort. And when in good condition, an adult wisent has almost no animal in its forest that would dare challenge it. Big, calm most of the time, but extremely powerful when forced to fight. That's why it deserves the 7th spot. Number 8, the Banteng. In 8th place is the Banteng. While most of the animals on this list are like giant trucks, the Banteng can be compared to an athlete with an elegant physique. It is often considered one of the most beautiful types of cattle in the world, a large male Banteng. It can weigh around 2,000 pounds or 900 kilos. Even though it's not as heavy as the previous animals on the list, it carries that weight in a slimmer, taller, and more athletic body. Male Bantengs have a shiny dark brown or almost black color. Meanwhile, the females have reddish-brown fur. Both of them have what looks like white socks on the lower part of their legs and a bright white mark on their rear. That's why the animal looks so well-dressed. The Banteng can be found in various parts of Southeast Asia, including the islands of Java, Bali, and Borneo. They are also the ancestors of Bali cattle, a type of domesticated cow. When it comes to strength, the Banteng should not be underestimated. A charging male Banteng with sharp horns is extremely dangerous. But instead of relying solely on raw strength, it relies more on speed, agility, and alertness. When there's danger, it prefers to quickly hide in the forest rather than engage in a fight. In areas where they live together, its main predators include the tiger and the dhole, or Asian wild dog. Unfortunately, the Banteng is also in a critical condition. Its population is estimated to have dropped by almost 95% since 1960. Beautiful, fast, and strong enough to be respected. That's why the 8th place rightfully goes to the Banteng. Number 9, the Kouprey. Kouprey in 9th place is one of the greatest mysteries in the world of wild cattle. The Kouprey. There is a possibility that this animal is already extinct because there have been no confirmed sightings of a living Kouprey for many decades. What's even more surprising is that it was only in 1937 when scientists discovered that this is actually a separate species of wild cattle. It was a very late discovery for such a large animal. The Kouprey, also known as the gray ox, used to live in the forests of Cambodia and some neighboring countries. It is estimated that a large male Kouprey weighs around 1,500 to 2,000 pounds, or 700 to 900 kilos. That's why it is also one of the largest members of the wild cattle family. The old male Kouprey have long horns that, as they age, become cracked and frayed. The tips are a unique characteristic that can't be seen in other types of wild cattle. This is the national animal of Cambodia, and it symbolizes the natural forest and the country's natural wealth. But it's sad to think that it may have completely disappeared. The last reliable reports of sightings were from 1960 to 1970. Since then, despite many expeditions and searches, no one has been able to prove that there are still living Kouprey. So why is it still on the list? Because when it was still alive, it was a large and powerful wild cattle in the forest. It lived together with tigers and leopards, and it was able to defend itself against dangers. It is also one of the most unique and most amazing members of the wild cattle family. That's why this list wouldn't be complete without the Kouprey. Number 10, the Tamaraw. In the 10th spot is the Tamaraw. From the giant animals at the top of the list, now we move to a smaller type of wild cattle. But don't underestimate it because the Tamaraw is known for its brave temperament. The Tamaraw is a small type of wild buffalo that can only be found on the island of Mindoro in the Philippines. You won't find a wild Tamaraw anywhere else in the world except here. It usually weighs between 440 to 660 pounds or 200 to 300 kilos, and it stands about 1 meter tall at the shoulder. Compared to the giants at the top of the list, it does seem small. It has short but sharp V-shaped horns and a sturdy build. But according to the locals and researchers, the Tamaraw is actually braver and more aggressive than most people think, based on its size. It may not be able to match the strength of large predators, but it moves quickly and is stubborn, and its horns are dangerous enough to cause serious injury. The Tamaraw is also the largest native land animal in the Philippines. In 2017, it was officially declared the national land animal of the Philippines. Because of this, it is not just a unique animal, but also a symbol of national pride. Unfortunately, the Tamaraw is critically endangered. Only a few hundred individuals are left in the forest due to hunting, loss of habitat, and even traps set for wild pigs. That's why the Tamaraw ended up in 10th place. Even though it's not among the heaviest wild cattle, it proves that true strength is not only measured by body size, but also by courage and inner strength. Number 11, the Lowland Anoa. In the 11th place is the Lowland Anoa. Now we're getting to the smallest members of the wild cattle family. The Lowland Anoa can only be found on the island of Sulawesi in Indonesia and on a small nearby island. At first glance, it looks like a water buffalo that has been shrunk down to the size of a large goat or a small deer. It usually weighs between 330 and 600 pounds and stands less than a meter tall at the shoulder. From a distance, you might not even notice it. It's actually a type of wild cattle, but don't underestimate it. It has short but sharp horns that are like spears. It's also known for being hard to predict. It's hard to predict its movements, and it defends itself quickly when it senses danger or feels cornered. It's a shy and solitary animal that lives in dense forests. It prefers to avoid people and other animals. But when forced to fight, its sharp horns are enough to cause harm. However, because of its small body, it cannot compete with the larger members of its family. Of the wild cattle, like many on this list, the Lowland Anoa is also endangered. Because of hunting and the continued loss of forests, small, elusive, but ready to defend itself. That's why it deserves the 11th spot. Number 12, the Mountain Anoa. In the 12th spot is the Mountain Anoa, the even smaller relative of the Lowland Anoa. It holds a unique title. It is the smallest wild cattle in the whole world. It lives in the high forests of Sulawesi, Indonesia. Its body is very small and stocky, so if you see it in the forest, you probably wouldn't think it's a type of wild cattle. It usually weighs up to 150 kilos and often even less than that. It has thick fur and short, sturdy horns. If you ever see it running between the trees, you'd probably mistake it for a strange animal in the forest rather than a member of the cattle family. When it comes to strength, it can't be compared to the giants at the top of the list. It's small, gentle, and prefers to avoid danger. Instead of fighting, however, it can still use its sharp horns to defend itself against predators or people who get too close. Just like many wild cattle, it is also at risk of extinction due to hunting and the continued destruction of its habitat. The Mountain Anoa proves that not all members of the wild cattle family are giants. Some are huge and strong, while others survive by being cautious and elusive. That's why this one is in 12th place. Number 13, the Saola. And in 13th place is the gentlest and lightest of them all, the Saola. When it comes to raw strength, this is the weakest member of the wild cattle family, but it is also perhaps the rarest and most important to protect. The Saola weighs only about 80 to 100 kilos. It resembles an antelope more than a cow. It has long and slightly curved horns. It also has beautiful white markings on its face. This animal is very unique. That's why it has its own separate branch in the family tree of wild cattle. And here's the surprising part. It was only in 1992 that science discovered the existence of the Saola. It was discovered after researchers in Vietnam found strange skulls with horns in the homes of hunters. This is the first large land mammal that was discovered anywhere in the world in over 50 years. Something almost unbelievable for an animal of that size, because of how extremely rare it is. It was called the Asian unicorn. Not because it is a magical creature, but because it is so rarely seen. It can only be found in the misty mountains of Annamite on the border of Vietnam and Laos. It also does not survive long when kept in captivity. Furthermore, there have been no confirmed images of the Saola from camera traps since 2013. According to experts, there may be fewer than 100 left in the wild. And it is possible that there are even less than that. That's why this is at the very last spot in our ranking. Not because this animal is weak or worthless, but because it was not created by nature. It wasn't created to fight, but to remain elusive and avoid danger. But now, its biggest battle is ongoing. For the Saola, it's not a fight against predators, but a fight for its own survival and continued existence.